In this edition of Art Rocks, the memoir of a free man subjected to slavery remains a compelling true drama.
Now to make a major adjustment on being this man.
A printmaker embraces his playful side.
The penguin inspired me to be a better father, so now the giraffe's inspiring me to be a better artist.
And we learn about the secret lives of the members of a new indie band.
We ended up with something that I think has a uniform feeling and texture.
It's all ahead on this edition of Art Rocks.
Art Rocks is made possible by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and by viewers like you.
Hello, I'm James Fox-Smith, publisher of Country Roads magazine. Thanks for joining us for LPB's new art program, Art Rocks, where each week a Louisiana artist, musician or writer will be featured along with talented folks from other communities across the U.S. We begin today with the story that went from near obscurity to being the subject of a recent Academy Award-winning film. 12 Years a Slave is the 1853 memoir by Solomon Northup. Publisher Frank Eakin and Academy Award winner Louis Gosset Jr. talked with LPB producer Tika Loden for this report.
They were abducted from their home country, put aboard ships, and transported as human cargo, heading to America. African slaves were first brought to this country as early as 1619. Between 1716 and 1731, nearly 6,000 Africans came to Louisiana, were sold as personal property, and became the workforce that fueled this state's economy. Finally, in 1808, a new federal law prohibiting the importation of slaves into the United States took effect. But now, because of the high demand for a labor force, merchants engaged in domestic slave trade. By the mid-1800s, New Orleans had become the South's largest slave trading center, with as many as 300 slave dealers in the city. And suppliers for those markets acquired slaves by any means necessary. Solomon Northup, a devoted husband, father, and free man from New York, was one of those captured.
He was lured on the prospect of a job to Washington, D.C., kidnapped, chained, shipped to Louisiana, sold into slavery by Theophilus Freeman in New Orleans, and spent 12 years enslaved near the town of Bunkie today.
After 12 years in bondage in the Louisiana parishes of Rapides and Avoyelles, Northup managed to escape. He returned home to his wife and children, and in 1853 published his story of enslavement and endurance. Northup's book, 12 Years a Slave, became a significant part of the late historian Sue Eakin's life and work.
My mother, interestingly, she grew up where the story took place. Her dad was a small planter on Compromise Plantation. And in 1931, when Mom was 12 years old, she hops in the truck with her dad, and they go to a nearby plantation owned by Dr. Hayes. And they arrive, and Dr. Hayes says to Mom, young lady, you're going to be bored sitting here listening to two old men. Would you like to come in and spend some time in our library and read a book? Dr. Hayes took the book off the library shelf and gave it to Mom. And that became her life's work. Her focus was on Black history and Solomon Northup's story in particular. It was an untold vital history, and Solomon Northup, she felt, was the most compelling vehicle to tell the story of Black history, of the slave era.
Dr. Sue Eakin conducted decades of research and produced an edition of Northup's book in 1968. 40 years later, at the age of 88, with more research and materials in hand, Eakin completed her final definitive edition of the book and the work of her lifetime. Passionate about his mother's work and Northup's story, Frank Eakin recently teamed with famed actor Louis Gosset Jr. to produce an audiobook of 12 Years a Slave.
I was not aware of the story until Frank got in touch with me, and he sent me the book. And I read the book. It was kind of painful read. It got emotional, and I had to take many, many breaks. my voice crackled and it got light. And we have to do so many pages per day, and it was almost impossible sometimes. And I had to make a major adjustment on being this man and being in his body and his voice. I can speak of slavery only so far as it came under my own observation, only so far as I have known and experienced it in my own person. My object is to give a candid and truthful statement of facts. He would make us hold up our heads, walk briskly back and forth, while customers would feel our hands and arms and bodies, turn us about, ask us what we could do, make us open our mouths, show our teeth. Solomon Northup was a very responsible, successful, artistic, and ideal husband, man, and businessman, and musician, and artist, which made him so sensitive, which is why it's so touching to be able to play and be that man. So it's a pleasure to play this artist and to know his feelings and how he cared about his children and his wife and his existence and how happy a man he really was. Then to see him subjected to 12 years of that had to be horrific, but he still had the wherewithal to write his memoirs so other people can understand the horrific ordeal that one goes through in slavery. It had to be told. The man, Solomon Northup, never forgot his service to mankind, even when he was a slave. There's a movie out, there's the audiobook, and there's a celebration of a story that nobody might have ever seen if he wasn't the man he was. What a legacy. When Eliza heard Freeman's determination not to part with Emily, she became absolutely frantic. "I will not go without her. They shall not take her from me," she fairly shrieked, her shrieks commingling with the loud and angry voice of Freeman, commanding her to be silent. Freeman, out of patience, tore Emily from her mother by main force, out of the door and into the street. We were quickly hurried. Still, we could hear her calling to her mother. "Come back. Don't leave me. Come back, Mama."
When originally published in 1853, Northup's book sold over 30,000 copies. After several editions in the 19th century, the book fell into obscurity for nearly a century. In 1968, Dr. Eakin, along with Dr. Joseph Logsdon, co-edited the historically annotated version published by LSU Press. For more information, visit 12yearsaslavebook.com. And now, here's a look at some of the upcoming arts events happening across Louisiana. For more information on these events, visit our website at lpb.org/artrocks. And you can find more arts events like these at countryroadsmag.com. The prints of Albuquerque, New Mexico artist Ray Maseman have hatched from dreams, myths, children's stories, and chance observations. With a strong imagination and a cast of animal characters, Maseman has created worlds that transport the viewer and leave them wanting more. Here's a look.
Your work lends itself to metaphor. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, all the stuff I make, it's kind of like after I've made it, like, oh, this is what this meant. At the time, it's just kind of I should put this bicycle here. I should put this animal on this bicycle. There should be a thing off the top of the bicycle. Oh, this wants a little mountain in the background. So it's like not thinking about what it all means. It's just like composition and what color looks good. And somehow through that, whatever was floating around the back of my brain pops out. You know, when my kids were younger, that was a lot of sort of fatherhood stuff and parenting things, and a lot of traveling happens, and I don't know how much that's wanting to travel. Some of it's wanting to literally travel, some of it's sort of like, life is a journey kind of thing. And I guess the idea of archetypes, I mean, that's the Jungian philosophy thing of these ideas that are in all our heads, and I figured that must be a good word, because even though in my head it was all about stuff in my head, it seems to resonate with their head too, and that's what archetypes are supposed to do. It's supposed to be universal. And the metaphor part of that is, you know, metaphors, they're kind of ambiguous. You know, sometimes maybe the boat is a boat, but you can interpret it lots of ways.
Your work is, to me, it's excitingly curious. You're trying to figure out the dynamics between, say, a penguin and a giraffe. So let's talk a little bit about the characters in your work.
The animal started happening because a friend gave me a book about animal fathers, and the first third of the book was about emperor penguins. And I didn't know anything about male penguins, but reading the book I discovered the male emperor penguins, they take care of the egg. Well, that's a good role model for being, I'm going to try to be that dedicated. And after a while, the penguin needed a buddy. Like the penguin was solo and the penguin needed a friend. And so seahorses, the males get pregnant. The males bear the young. And so the seahorse started showing up. At that point, evolved from this fatherhood thing to just, are they two friends? Is it a relationship? Are they a couple? Are they parenting the egg? Is the egg something else? Like the whole metaphor thing kind of took off.
Questions.
And it also kind of evolved into this archetypal thing of the anima and the animus, where like, if you're a man, you have your internal woman, and if you're a woman, you have your internal man. And it kind of became that. I'm still like, depending on you, the viewer, as to whether the penguin's the internal woman or the seahorse is or what. But just that playing with like female-male identity and like what that means.
And the giraffe and the bird?
So, well, the penguin seahorse got to the point where like people were giving me penguin and seahorse gifts. And I was just, I don't want to stop. I don't want to be the penguin guy. I don't want to be the seahorse guy. I need a new animal. And around that time, I was reading a book about the giraffes in the Prague Zoo in what was then Czechoslovakia. And it was this whole epic story of how the giraffes got from Africa to the zoo, and it had all this stuff about giraffe biology and giraffe psychology and just sort of how giraffes work. And one of the things that really struck me was their eyeball is proportionally the biggest eyeball of any animal. There was a sense that for giraffes, their vision is kind of the way smell is for dogs. Like, they're, you know, dogs smell things we don't smell, and a giraffe maybe sees things we don't see, or sees a level of detail that we don't see as humans. And I thought, well, that's a good artist metaphor. I'm going to try to. The penguin inspired me to be a better father, so now the giraffe is inspiring me to be a better artist.
So when you have the two giraffes staring at each other, and one has the caged bird and one has the not caged bird, there's certainly a narrative. And maybe that's where the question is. There
is a narrative. There's definitely. I mean, sometimes I have a fuzzy idea of the narrative when I start, or maybe I even have a clear idea. Sometimes I don't know until it's over, but there's a narrative. And I want people to be able to look at it and make up a story, or have a sense of story, but without it being tied to, this is the one story.
So do people ever ask you what the bird is?
Birds are like this stereotypical, the iconography is birds are supposed to be souls or spirits, and that's kind of what they've ended up being most of the time. So like in the two giraffe ones, the bird, they each have a bird, and the bird's like their little spirit or their little soul or whatever, and one of them has her bird in a cage, and the other one has his bird free, but he's in a cage. And whatever you may think you're doing at a given time, your bird's off there maybe doing what you're really doing, or maybe actually seeing what you're really doing, because it's up flying up high, it has the bird's eye view.
That kind of sense of play, that inherent sense of play that children have and that you have in your work, can you tell us where that playfulness in your work comes from?
It's really important to feel like you are safe and comfortable enough to just try things without knowing how it's going to turn out, without knowing for sure what it's going to mean. I think part of why I like setting up the pictures so people have to ask questions is it sort of forces them to get out of their little rut, whatever their little rut might be.
In your personal experience, your personal background, how does playfulness connect to kind of your upbringing?
Neither one of my parents was super playful, but my dad definitely was not. And as he went through life, and there's lots of addiction stuff there, and alcohol and cigarettes and whatnot. Especially as I got older, I could look at him and be like, you're stuck. I mean, definitely when addiction stuff happens, like, people have done studies where like people's brains get kind of almost literally rutted, like you get in this path of whatever your addiction is. And I'd read about those and look at my father and be like, well, yeah, it's too scary to get out of the rut. And there's not any play happening. I have two brothers. I think for all three of us, we sort of looked at our father and went, we're not going to be like that. I'm going to be a better dad. I'm going to be a more happier person. And I think for me, the art was just a way to explore that.
Let's extend this playful trajectory. What is the future, you know, the kind of progression of your art?
I don't know. I think a big change just happened. I haven't digested it yet. This summer I'd spent a month living in the Faroe Islands, which are up in the Norwegian Sea. It was this artist residency. So I spent a month in this whole other country, far away from here. It removed me from our normal context. It was an adventure. And since I got back, I've had almost no interest in giraffes. The penguin is still floating around, but I think it's a return to, I think earlier the penguin was more like partly a self-portrait, sort of like stand-in for me, and that the penguin has reappeared that way. But I don't know yet what that means. It makes me think about stuff, but I'm not conscious that I'm thinking. I'm just making stuff, and then down the road, I'll know what it means. And I'm not there yet. I'm the penguin in the boat sailing across the water.
The metaphor.
Or floating through the air, the metaphor of like, I know I'm going somewhere. Something about being a human. You want to go see what's there. You want to go find out what else is there besides what's right in front of me.
To learn more, visit raymaseman.com. Now, let's take a look at one of Louisiana's treasures. This week, we'll explore shotgun houses.
Fire a shotgun in the front yard, and it could travel through every room in the house to the backyard without hitting a wall. At least that's according to common folklore. But the shotgun house has another explanation for its name. These simply designed homes became a popular style in the early 1800s as Haitian refugees moved to New Orleans after a revolt that freed slaves working the sugarcane plantations. The design of the shotgun house resembles those built in West Africa, called shogun houses, or god's houses in the native Yoruba language. With no central hallway, each room leads to the next, and then the next. The shotgun house worked well for the narrow lots of divided properties in New Orleans, where taxes were based upon the frontage of the property. The houses were designed for a hot climate, elevated, with high ceilings and tall shuttered windows that provided for cross-ventilation. This house design also brought a new concept to the U.S., the front porch. The front stoop with an overhanging roof provided a convenient place for the family to gather on a hot evening. The proximity of the sidewalk made this an excellent place to visit with the neighbors. Part of their charm is in the decorative accents. Owners added elaborate woodwork to the narrow house fronts with brackets and intricate Victorian gingerbread. Later came the double shotgun, a modification combining two of the houses that shared a common wall and could be used as a duplex or a single house for a larger family. And for those houses expanding upward, the two-story model is called a camelback. Their popularity peaked in the mid-1800s until the early 1900s, with shotgun houses being built among many other cities across the United States. A contribution from former Haitian slaves, the shotgun house has become part of our common architectural heritage in New Orleans and other cities across the South.
Dave Buker and the Historians is a Columbus, Ohio-based indie band. Here's an inside scoop into the origins of the band's name and a front row seat to their first music video.
My name is Dave. I'm a science educator, and I sing and play guitar in the band.
I'm Joe. I'm a preschool teacher, and I play drums.
My name is Brooklyn, and I play keys and sing.
My name is Leanna, and I sing harmonies, and I am a science educator.
My name is Paul. I work at Sam Ash Music, and I play keys and sing in the band.
My name is Mark. I work for a textbook company, and I play bass guitar.
The name is because it's sort of our philosophy that songwriting is the act of documenting your own emotions and experiences that, and of those that you know that may have otherwise gone undocumented. So you're kind of there taking snapshots and putting those in files so everybody can kind of remember those things. I think in terms of producing an album, that's down to an individual basis. If you want to make a certain kind of music and you want to record it and you want it to be good, it's all dependent on how hard you work.
Just last week I said it kind of felt like a musical soundtrack, where it had a theme that it started with and came back to and kind of finished with.
Yeah, it definitely does. And that theme is the title, the line, "What Can Bring You Back to Me?" That shows up in 3 different songs.
You hear with sweeter tears that can bring you back to me.
We worked really hard on this record to kind of find a sound, and not in a kind of a, we need to write songs that are going to fit this mold, because that feeling would be a little bit boring, but we ended up with something that I think has a uniform feeling and texture that makes it feel like an album. About a month ago, we filmed a music video. We filmed it at Cafe Kerouac Coffee Shop, which is down on High Street near OSU's campus.
It's been very good to us over the years as well.
Yeah, we've played there a lot. Mike, who owns it, is incredibly good to us. You will notice in the video that Paul is not facing the band, and we wanted Paul to be facing the band, but when we tried to move the piano, the leg fell off. So,
if you go there and find that the piano is fallen over,
don't tell him. I think it was already broken, but Mike might not be happy with us.
Winter blew a chill through my window to my bones, so I followed your footsteps in the snow. Oh, and they led me to your door, let me feel some warmth, and I remembered what my thawing heart is for. Spring came, you stood just like Eve with an apple, and so we built our paradise in Tower of Babel. And as we climbed up to the top, we knew even if we dropped, it hardly mattered, not even God could make us stop. Must be something about the weather as it's changing. All these molecules of air trying to keep us separated. I know change is what we need desperately. I'm just sorry that I ever had to leave. The heat of the summer melted us together, and so we joked about our plans and the opinion of my brother. But as I wandered through our halls, thinking of it all, I have to wonder if jokes will lead us to our fall. Must be something about the weather as it's changing. All these molecules of air trying to keep us separated. I know change is what we need desperately. I'm just sorry that I ever had to leave.
Now the times past have changed, and I'm sorry for the struggle. I can build a paradise and be a better angel.
But as I hear you full of shame, calling out my name, I have my doubts if things could ever be the same. Must be something about the weather as it's changing. All these molecules of air trying to keep us separated. I know change is what we need desperately. I'm just sorry that I ever had to leave.
To learn more, visit davebuker.com. And that wraps it up for this edition of Art Rocks. To learn more about the show, visit our website at lpb.org/artrocks, where you'll find feature videos and information on upcoming art events. Until next time, I'm James Fox-Smith, and thanks for watching.
Winter blew a chill through my window to my bones, so I followed your footsteps in the snow. Oh, and they led me to your door, let me feel some warmth, and I remembered what my thawing heart is for. Spring came, you stood just like Eve with an apple, and so we built our paradise in Tower of Babel. And as we climbed up to the top, we knew even if we dropped, it hardly mattered, not even God could make us stop. There must be something about the weather as it's changing, all these molecules of air trying to keep us separated. I know change is what we need desperately. I'm just sorry that I ever had to